This story is titled, My Entitled Family Bragged About Getting My Great Uncle's Money, but He Only Put Me in the Will. Now, they are begging me to reconsider. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Alright, so here's the deal. My name's Sam, 24 male, and I've pretty much been the odd one out in my family for as long as I can remember. Not because I'm struggling or anything. I actually have my life together pretty well, but because I've never fit into their little mold of what success should look like. See, my dad, Tom, is a hotshot lawyer who thinks the world revolves around courtrooms and contracts. My mom, Linda, was an RN before she retired, and she's always been the type who cares a little too much about keeping up appearances. And then there's my siblings, Brian, Lucas, and Emily. They're the golden trio. Brian owns a chain of gyms and is constantly bragging about how he's promoting health and fitness across the state. Lucas is the tech genius, running his own startup that he swears is going to disrupt something someday. And Emily? She married into money. Her husband, Nate, is a corporate lawyer, and they love posting pictures of their perfect suburban life with captions like, hard work and love, happiness. Then there's me. I'm a welder and part-time hunting guide. I love what I do. Welding is an art. It takes skill, precision, and creativity. I've built a solid career for myself, and the money's damn good. I'm talking six figures some years, depending on the projects I take. And the hunting guide gig? That's just for fun. It's not about the money, it's about being outdoors and sharing something I'm passionate about. But try telling that to my family. To them, I might as well be flipping burgers at a fast food joint. My mom, bless her heart, loves to ask, when are you going to stop playing with metal and get a real job? As if I'm sitting in a shed hammering tin cans together. Brian constantly tries to rope me into his gym business, saying things like, if you want to do something meaningful, I could use someone to manage operations. Thanks, but no thanks. Lucas, meanwhile, treats me like I'm some kind of caveman. You should get into tech, Sam. That's where the real money is. Real money? My bank account would like a word. I've stopped trying to explain myself to them. What's the point? They've made up their minds. And honestly, I don't care enough to change them. They can keep their judgmental attitudes. I'm happy. I'm successful in my own way, and I don't need their approval to validate my life. The only person who ever understood me was my great-uncle Jack. Jack was my grandfather's brother, and he was nothing like the rest of the family. He was the kind of guy who lived life on his own terms. He didn't care about titles or degrees. He cared about character. Jack was a lawyer too back in the day, but he gave it all up to move out to the country and live off the land. He built his own little haven, a cozy hunting cabin on 70 acres of pristine wilderness. Jack and I bonded over hunting and fishing. He taught me everything I know about tracking, shooting, and respecting nature. He didn't look down on me for being a welder. In fact, he thought it was a damn respectable trade. It's honest work, he used to say. A man who can create something with his hands will never go hungry. When Jack got diagnosed with cancer about a year ago, it hit me hard. He'd always been so full of life. It was hard to imagine him sick and frail. The family's reaction? A collective shrug. Well, he's lived a long life, Emily said. Like that made it okay to just ignore him. Nobody offered to help. Nobody even visited. They were too busy with their oh-so-important lives to care. I couldn't stand to see Jack alone, so I stepped in. I started visiting him regularly, helping out around the house, cooking meals, and just keeping him company. It wasn't always easy. I had to cut back on work hours to make it happen. But Jack was family, and family takes care of each other. At least that's how I see it. Meanwhile, the rest of the family continued living their lives as if Jack didn't exist. Emily and Nate were busy planning their next big vacation to Europe. Brian was opening another gym. Lucas was buried in some new app he was developing. And my parents? They didn't even bother pretending to care. My mom would occasionally ask, how's Jack doing? But it was more out of obligation than genuine concern. I didn't mind. If anything, their indifference just made me want to do more for Jack. He deserved better than to be forgotten by the people he'd spent his life loving. One evening, after I'd finished helping Jack with dinner, he asked me, is this hurting you, Sam? Taking care of me, I mean. I told him the truth. I've had to cut back on work a bit, but it's fine. You're family, Jack. I wouldn't be here if I didn't want to be. He nodded, but I could tell he was thinking about something. You've got a good heart, kid, he said. Don't ever let them take that away from you. I didn't know what he meant at the time, but I'd soon find out. Afterwards, things start to show their true colors. Let me paint the scene. Jack was getting weaker by the day, and it was clear his time was running out. While I was spending my days helping him, making sure he ate, took his meds, and had someone to talk to, my family was nowhere to be found. To them, Jack was already gone. They acted like his existence was just an inconvenience. I'm sure Sam's got it handled, Emily said when I asked if she'd come visit him for his birthday. His 80th birthday. Lucas didn't even reply to the group text I sent out. Brian's response? Man, I'd love to, but I'm swamped with the gym opening. They weren't swamped. They were just selfish. Jack didn't complain, though. He was one of those people who didn't like to burden others, even when he needed help. But I could see the disappointment in his eyes every time I mentioned someone from the family. They're busy, he'd say, trying to cover for them. Busy? More like too self-absorbed to care. One evening, after I'd finished cleaning up dinner, Jack asked me to sit down. He looked serious, like he'd been thinking about something for a while. Sam, I've been meaning to ask you something, he said. Taking care of me like this, how much is it costing you? I shrugged. I'm working fewer hours, but it's the least I can do. He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. You've got a good heart, kid. You always have. I just don't want you to end up regretting this. Regret what? I asked, genuinely confused. Putting so much into helping me? The rest of them wouldn't lift a finger, and I don't want you to feel cheated because you're the only one who cares. That hit me hard. I hadn't thought about it that way because, honestly, I didn't expect anything from Jack. I was doing this because I loved him, not because I wanted a reward. I don't feel cheated, I said. If anything, I'm grateful I get to spend this time with you. They're the ones who'll regret it. He didn't say much after that, just smiled a little and nodded. A week later, he dropped the big news. I was over at his place helping him sort through some old papers. Jack had a lifetime of hunting licenses, photos, and little mementos from his days as a lawyer. He asked me to take out a specific envelope from his desk drawer. When I handed it to him, he held onto it for a second before saying, Sam, I've changed my will. At first, I thought he meant he'd added a charity or something. He was always talking about donating to wildlife conservation and veteran organizations. But then he looked me straight in the eye and said, I want you to have the cabin and $200,000 to fix it up. The rest is going to charity. I just stared at him. Why? Because you've done more for me than anyone else, he said. You've been here, day in and day out, while the rest of them couldn't even bother to call. You're the only one who truly cares, Sam. And I want you to have a real start in life, a chance to build something that's yours. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to protest, to tell him he didn't have to do that. But I could see how serious he was, and I didn't want to disrespect his wishes. Jack, I don't know what to say, I finally managed. Don't say anything, he said. Just promise me you'll take care of the place. Make it your own. And don't let them take it from you. Of course, it didn't take long for the family to start sniffing around. They still had no idea about the will, but they could sense something was up. Brian called me one evening, which was weird because he never called unless he wanted something. Hey, Sam, he said, his voice all casual. So, how's Jack doing? He's hanging in there, I said, keeping it short. Cool, he said, like we were talking about the weather. Hey, I was thinking, once Jack, passes, what's going to happen to the cabin? I nearly laughed. The man couldn't even wait for Jack to die before trying to stake his claim. Not sure, I said, playing dumb. Why? Oh, no reason, he said quickly. I just thought it'd be cool to keep it in the family, Maybe we could all chip in and fix it up. By chip in, I knew he meant me doing all the work. Yeah, maybe, I said, just to shut him up. The next day, Emily texted me. Hey, Sam, I was thinking, wouldn't it be amazing if we turned Jack's cabin into a family retreat? The kids would love it. First of all, Emily doesn't even have kids yet. Second, she hadn't been to the cabin in years. The last time she'd visited, she complained about the bugs and said the place smelled like old wood. Now, suddenly, it was her dream vacation spot? I didn't respond. The entitlement only got worse. Lucas, who hadn't spoken to Jack in God knows how long, started dropping hints in the family group chat about how much land like Jack's was worth. Prime real estate, he said. Could easily sell for $1 million if developed right. I wanted to scream. These people didn't care about Jack, his wishes, or his legacy. They only saw dollar signs. Meanwhile, Jack kept declining. He was tired more often, and some days, he didn't even have the energy to leave his bed. But he never lost his sharpness. One evening, as I was helping him with his meds, he looked at me and said, You know they're going to come after you, right? I nodded. Let them try. Jack grinned. That's my boy. Jack was right. I knew they'd come for me eventually, but I wasn't worried. I'd made my peace with the fact that I wasn't their idea of successful. And now, thanks to Jack, I had something they couldn't take away, no matter how hard they tried. Little did I know just how far they'd go. By this point, Jack was in his final weeks. I was with him almost every day, helping him get through the worst of it, while my family couldn't even bother to send a card. The only time they ever mentioned Jack was when they wanted to speculate about his estate. I should have known something was up when Brian suggested a family dinner. For context, family dinners weren't a thing anymore. We barely saw each other unless it was a holiday, and even then, everyone left as soon as the pie was served. But Brian was insistent, so I agreed to go, mostly out of curiosity. The moment I walked into Mom and Dad's house, I could feel the tension. Everyone was there. Brian, Lucas, Emily, and their spouses, and they all had this fake, overly polite vibe going on. Mom greeted me with a smile so tight it looked like it physically hurt her. "Sam, you made it," she said, like I was some kind of prodigal son returning home. "Yeah, what's this about?" I asked, skipping the small talk. Brian clapped me on the back and said, "We just thought it'd be nice to get together and, talk about Jack." Red flag number 1. We all sat down at the table, and for the first 10 minutes, it was nothing but awkward chatter about work, vacations, and whatever new nonsense Lucas's tech company was up to. Then Emily decided to cut to the chase. "So, Sam," she said, putting on her best concerned sister voice, "what's Jack's plan for the cabin? You've been spending so much time with him. I figured you'd know." Red flag number 2. I shrugged. "He hasn't really said." "Well," Brian chimed in, "it'd make sense for us to keep it in the family, don't you think? Maybe we could use it as a vacation spot, like a family retreat." "Yeah," Emily said, her eyes lighting up. "I was telling Nate that the kids would love it. They could grow up surrounded by nature. It'd be such a great legacy for Jack." "Your kids aren't even born yet," I said, unable to stop myself. Emily glared at me, but before she could respond, Lucas jumped in. "Honestly, I think we should sell it. That land is worth a fortune. We could split the money and invest it in something worthwhile." "Split it?" Brian scoffed. "Why would we split it when I've got a business that could actually use it?" Jack would have wanted it to go towards something meaningful. Meaningful? Like expanding his gym empire? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were fighting over the cabin, as if Jack was already dead. "I don't think Jack would want it sold," I said, trying to steer the conversation away from their greed. Brian leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Come on, Sam. What are you going to do with it? Weld up a hunting blind? Let's be realistic here." I wanted to punch him. Instead, I just said, "Jack hasn't made any decisions yet. You should probably talk to him if you're so interested." After that dinner, their entitlement went into overdrive. Brian started calling me almost daily, always with some new idea for the cabin. "Sam, I've been thinking, what if we turn the cabin into a rental property? We could make a killing renting it out to tourists during hunting season. I'd handle all the logistics, of course, and you could do the repairs since you're so handy." Translation: he'd profit while I did all the work. Then Emily sent me a text. "Sam, we really need to talk about Jack's estate. The cabin is too important to let it sit unused. Call me ASAP." When I didn't respond, she followed up with another text. "This isn't just about you, Sam. It's about the family. Stop being selfish." Selfish? I was the only one taking care of Jack, and somehow I was the selfish one? A week later, Emily and Brian showed up unannounced at Jack's house. I was there helping him sort through some old photos when I heard the knock on the door. Jack was too weak to get up, so I answered it. And there they were, all smiles and fake concern. "Hey, Sam," Emily said, holding a container of cookies like she was trying to bribe her way in. "We thought we'd stop by and see how Jack's doing." I didn't buy it for a second, but Jack was always gracious, even when he knew people had ulterior motives. He invited them in, and for the next half hour, they put on their best loving family act. "Jack, you're looking great," Brian lied. "Is there anything you need? Anything at all?" Emily added, laying it on thick. Jack just smiled politely and said, "I'm fine, but thank you for stopping by." Then Brian, who apparently couldn't help himself, said, "We were just talking about the cabin the other day. It's such a beautiful property. Have you thought about what's going to happen to it?" Jack gave him a sharp look. "I have," he said, his tone making it clear the subject was closed. That didn't stop them. After they left, Emily sent me a text. "Jack's really starting to decline. We need to start planning for what's next. Let's meet soon to discuss." Discuss? Discuss what? She didn't care about Jack's health. She just wanted to know how much she could get out of him before he passed. The entitlement hit its peak when Lucas posted in our family group chat, "Does anyone know if Jack has a financial advisor? We should make sure his estate is being managed properly." I almost threw my phone across the room. They weren't even pretending to care anymore. Jack was just a pile of assets to them, and they couldn't wait to divvy him up. That night, I told Jack about their antics. He laughed, shook his head, and said, "Let them talk. They'll get what they deserve soon enough." I didn't know what he meant at the time, but I'd soon find out. Jack passed away on a quiet morning, with me and his dog Maisie by his side. He'd been fading for days, and I think he knew it was time. His last words to me were, "Don't let them ruin what's yours." That stuck with me. Jack had spent his final months ensuring his legacy would go to someone who cared, someone who would honor it, not squander it like the rest of them would. As much as I was grieving, I didn't have the luxury of wallowing for long. The will reading was scheduled for the following week, and let me tell you, I was not looking forward to it. My family had been circling like vultures for months, and now the feast was finally here, or so they thought. The day of the will reading, I showed up early, mostly to mentally prepare myself. Jack's lawyer, Mr. Nelson, greeted me with a firm handshake and a knowing smile. "You ready for this?" he asked. "Not really," I admitted. He chuckled. "Well, just remember, Jack made his decisions very clear. There's no room for debate." That was comforting, but I knew my family well enough to expect fireworks. One by one, they trickled into the office. Brian came in first, dressed like he was closing some big business deal, with his shiny watch and smug grin. "Morning, Sam," he said, as if we were best buddies. Emily and Nate arrived next, Emily already in full drama mode. "This is going to be so hard," she said, clutching Nate's arm like she was about to faint. Lucas showed up last, looking bored and annoyed, like this was some meeting he'd been forced to attend. "Let's just get this over with," he said, plopping down in a chair. Mom and Dad were there too, of course, sitting in the corner like royalty overseeing their court. Mom gave me a tight smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes, while Dad didn't even bother acknowledging me. Once everyone was seated, Mr. Nelson started reading the will. He began with the smaller items: Jack's collection of fishing gear, some antique hunting rifles, and a few personal mementos. Then came the surprising news to my family. "To my great-nephew Sam, I leave my hunting cabin and the surrounding 70 acres of land, along with $200,000 to renovate and maintain the property." You could have heard a pin drop. Brian was the first to break the silence. "What?" he said, his voice rising. "That can't be right. Jack wouldn't just give all that to Sam." Mr. Nelson didn't even look up. "It's what's written here in the will, Mr. Thompson. Shall I continue?" Emily, meanwhile, was already in tears. "This isn't fair," she sobbed. "What about my kids? Jack always said he wanted to support the next generation. How are we supposed to carry on his legacy without the cabin?" I couldn't help myself. "Your kids aren't even born yet, Emily. Maybe focus on raising them first before you start claiming Jack's legacy." That earned me a glare. But before she could respond, Lucas jumped in. "This has to be fake. Jack was smart. He wouldn't leave all his assets to one person. There must be another version of the will." Mr. Nelson calmly pulled out a second folder. "This is the most recent and legally binding version of the will, signed and notarized. If you'd like, I can walk you through the process Jack took to ensure there would be no confusion." Lucas shut up real quick. Then came the real shock: the rest of Jack's estate. He'd made it clear that everything else, his investments, savings, and other assets, was to be liquidated and donated to charities he cared about, like wildlife conservation and veteran support organizations. The room erupted. "What the hell is this?" Brian shouted, slamming his hand on the table. Emily was openly sobbing now, and Nate was awkwardly patting her shoulder like he didn't know what else to do. "He must have been pressured," Emily wailed. "Sam must have convinced him to do this." Mom finally spoke up, her voice dripping with anger. "What did you do, Sam? Did you manipulate Jack into this? There's no way he would have left us out unless you put ideas in his head." I stayed calm, even though my blood was boiling. "I didn't manipulate anyone. Jack made his choices because he knew you didn't care about him. You cared about his money. That's why you're all so mad right now." That hit a nerve. Brian stood up, towering over me like he thought he could intimidate me. "You don't deserve this," he said, his voice low and threatening. "You didn't even care about Jack until there was something in it for you." I couldn't help but laugh. That's rich coming from the guy who couldn't even visit Jack once in the past year. Don't talk to me about who cared. The rest of the reading was a blur of angry outbursts and passive-aggressive comments. By the time it was over, I was exhausted but oddly satisfied. They could scream and cry all they wanted. It wouldn't change the fact that Jack's decisions were final. As we were leaving, Mom cornered me near the door. "You've torn this family apart," she hissed. "If you had any decency, you'd share the inheritance. Jack would want you to." I looked her straight in the eye and said, "If Jack wanted that, he would have written it in the will. But he didn't, did he?" She stormed off without another word. The family didn't just want the cabin for sentimental or symbolic reasons. There was a financial motive driving their desperation. What none of them had openly admitted was that the cabin's land had significant development potential. Over the years, the area surrounding Jack's property had become a prime location for upscale vacation homes and resorts. Developers had already approached nearby landowners, offering sky-high prices to purchase acreage for new projects. The 70 acres Jack left me were one of the largest untouched parcels in the region, with stunning views, access to a creek, and proximity to a growing tourist town. Word had spread in the community that the land could fetch upwards of $2 million if sold to the right buyer. Brian, Emily, and Lucas weren't just seeing a cabin, they were seeing dollar signs. I knew this was only the beginning of their schemes and tantrums, but I was ready for whatever came next. Jack had trusted me to carry on his legacy, and I wasn't about to let him down. For the next few weeks, I was bombarded with calls, texts, and emails from every single one of them. It didn't matter how many times I told them no, they were relentless. The first incident happened at the cabin itself. One day I came home from work to find my doorbell camera blinking with notifications. When I checked the footage, there they were. Mom, Emily, and Brian standing on the porch, trying to get inside. Mom was peeking through the windows, while Emily tugged at the doorknob. Brian, always the opportunist, was inspecting the side door like he was planning to break in. "Don't touch anything," Mom said sharply. "We don't want him to sue." I couldn't believe it. They had actually driven out to the cabin while I wasn't home, thinking they could, what? Claim squatters' rights? Steal something? I called Mom immediately. "What the hell were you doing at my house?" She didn't even bother denying it. "We were just looking around," she said, like that made it okay. "Jack's cabin is part of the family, Sam. You don't have the right to keep us out." "It's not part of the family," I said. "It's mine, and if you set foot on my property again, I'll call the cops." "Sam," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern, "don't be like this. We're just trying to do what's best for everyone. You're being unreasonable." "No," I said firmly. "I'm honoring Jack's wishes. You're the ones being unreasonable." That night, I installed new locks on every door and set up additional cameras around the property. I also put up no trespassing signs at the edge of the driveway, just in case they decided to try their luck again. But they didn't stop. Emily sent me an email the next day, begging me to sell the cabin to her for $100,000, less than half its value. "Please, Sam," she wrote. "This cabin means everything to me and Nate. We'll pay you more than it's worth. You don't even need it." I didn't even bother responding. Brian's next move was to spread rumors about me to the neighbors. I found out from one of Jack's old friends, Mr. Hardy, who lived down the road. "Brian's been telling people you tricked Jack into leaving you the cabin," Mr. Hardy said. "Don't worry, I set him straight, but you should know they're trying to turn people against you." It didn't work. Jack's neighbors knew the truth. They'd seen how often I was there, taking care of him. Brian and Emily hadn't set foot on the property in years. Lucas, of course, took a different approach, one that involved more scheming and less crying. About 2 weeks after the will reading, I got a call from Mr. Nelson, Jack's lawyer. "Sam," he said, his voice serious, "we've got a bit of a situation. Your brother Lucas submitted what he claims is a revised version of Jack's will." I froze. "What?" "Don't worry," Mr. Nelson said quickly. "It's an obvious forgery. Jack's signature doesn't match, and the notary stamp is fake. I've already filed a report with the authorities." I couldn't believe it. Lucas had actually gone to the trouble of faking an entirely new will, one that conveniently split Jack's estate evenly among all of us. I called him immediately. "What the hell is wrong with you, Lucas?" I demanded. He didn't even try to deny it. "I was just correcting an injustice," he said smugly. "Jack would have wanted the family to share everything. You don't deserve to keep it all to yourself." "Jack made his wishes clear," I snapped. "You're just mad they didn't include you." "It's not fair," he shouted. "You manipulated him, Sam. Admit it." I hung up before I could say something I'd regret. The next day, Lucas learned what happens when you try to tamper with legal documents. Mr. Nelson had followed through on his promise, and Lucas was officially under investigation for forgery. Apparently, when you fake a will, it's not just frowned upon, it's a felony. I got a call from the investigator assigned to the case, asking if I'd be willing to cooperate. "Absolutely," I said without hesitation. If Lucas wanted to play stupid games, he could win some serious consequences. A few days later, Lucas called me, his voice shaking with panic. "Sam, you have to help me," he said. I almost laughed. "Help you? Are you serious right now? The police showed up at my house," he shouted. "They're saying I committed fraud. This is insane. You need to tell them it's a misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding," I said coldly. "You forged a will, Lucas. That's a crime. What did you think was going to happen?" "You can't do this to me," he yelled. "We're family." "Funny how you only care about family when it's convenient for you," I replied. Good luck explaining your injustice theory to the judge. Things escalated quickly after that. Lucas was charged with forgery and fraud, and he had to hire a lawyer. He tried to downplay the situation at first, claiming it was just a family dispute, but the evidence was damning. The fake will was laughably bad. Jack's signature looked like it had been traced, and the notary stamp was something Lucas had printed off the internet. Even the dates didn't match up. It was a complete amateur job, and the authorities saw right through it. During the investigation, they found emails Lucas had sent to a shady online service offering to create fake documents. One of the emails even said, "Can you make this look convincing enough to fool a lawyer?" That alone was enough to seal his fate. At the preliminary hearing, Lucas looked like a shell of his former self. Gone was the smug tech bro who thought he could outsmart me. When the prosecutor laid out the evidence, Lucas's lawyer tried to argue that it was all a misunderstanding, that Lucas was just trying to clarify Jack's wishes. The judge wasn't buying it. "You don't clarify a will by forging signatures and faking legal documents," the judge said bluntly. Lucas eventually took a plea deal to avoid jail time, but it came at a steep price. He was slapped with a hefty fine, had to pay restitution for the legal fees I incurred during the ordeal, and was required to complete community service. On top of that, his reputation was in shambles. Word got out about the case, and his startup lost investors. The rest of the family tried to rally around him, blaming me for taking things too far. "Did you really have to involve the police, Sam?" Mom asked during one of her many guilt-tripping calls. "Lucas is your brother," I said firmly. "He's lucky he didn't end up in prison. But he was just trying to fix things," she insisted. "No," I snapped. "He was trying to steal from me. Stop making excuses for him." They didn't like that answer, but I didn't care. By the time it was all over, Lucas was a broken man. He tried to rebuild his business, but his reputation was so tarnished that most of his clients had moved on. He even had the nerve to ask me for financial help at one point, claiming he needed just a little support to get back on his feet. "Not happening," I told him. "You can figure it out on your own, just like I've been doing my entire life." He hung up on me, and I haven't heard from him since. Watching Lucas face real consequences was oddly satisfying. For once, the golden boy of the family couldn't weasel his way out of trouble. He'd always acted like he could do whatever he wanted without facing the repercussions, but not this time. By this point, I was done playing nice. I filed a police report for the attempted break-in and let the family know in no uncertain terms that I was done entertaining their nonsense. "Don't contact me again unless it's through a lawyer," I told them. Mom called me a selfish traitor. Emily cried about how I was tearing the family apart. Brian accused me of ruining Jack's legacy. And Lucas? He threatened to sue me, even though his forgery attempt had already backfired spectacularly. Through it all, I stayed calm. "You should have respected him while he was alive if you wanted to be part of it," I said every time. By the end of the month, I had completely cut them off. Their numbers were blocked, and my cabin was fully secured. Let them scheme all they want. They weren't getting a damn thing from me.